you're eating every day, but you're not using it all up, then the cell's getting more and more and more, but it's not getting used up. So the cell gets jam-packed with all of this extra glucose, and it stores it. The cells store it as what's called glycogen. And so in the side of the cell on one side, off to one side in the closet, they're filling up with glucose, right? It's filling up. When it gets full, the cell shuts off the insulin receptors from the inside, locks them. Okay, done. No more sugars coming in because our almacén is full completely. So then on the outside, the insulin comes and says, nope, we can't open this door because it's locked from the inside. So then your sugar goes up more because you can't get any sugar in there. So you eat more sugar and it goes up more, and then you eat more sugar and it goes up more. And then your pancreas is making a bunch of insulin going, we need to get rid of this. We got all this extra sugar. And so we need all the cells to bring it in, but the cells are going, no, we're full. What do you call that? Well, what happens is it's toxicity. Blood sugar's going up because the cells are so full, they'll become toxic on glucose. So even though they absolutely have to have glucose, they get toxic on it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Fixed Blood Sugar webinar. All right, you guys are hopping on fast. We're excited. It's going to be another really good webinar where we talk about type 2. Oh, I didn't adjust the sun. I still have the line right here. Should have adjusted the sun before I started, but it's fine. I guess I could go pull the blinds down.
Oh, gotta adjust the sun.
I know. If I just wait a little bit, it'll move.
Yeah.
It's fine. Wow, we got a lot of you hopping on fast. Awesome. We're so glad you guys are here. Today, we are going to talk about type 2. We're going to talk about why low carb works when we are fighting type 2 or reversing type 2. And we're going to answer some of your questions. So for those of you who are new, say hello. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know that if this is your first time on the webinar. You can do that in the Q&A. It's kind of the best place for me to manage comments and questions. You can also post your type 2 related questions in that Q&A. Another thing we'd love to know is, have you used the diabetes solution kit? That's kind of something we talk about a lot on this webinar. So we'd like to know who's used it. Okay, we're getting a lot of people already hopping on. Olivia's here. Timothy says, first time and looking forward to this. Timothy, welcome. We're so glad to have you. You will be blessed by Dr. Saunders' knowledge. Sometimes I feel like, one of these days we'll go back through and talk about all your credentials. Mostly this is what I would say. I've known Dr. Saunders for a long time. He's amazing. He doesn't push supplements, or drugs, which sometimes frustrates me because I just want a quick fix to help my illness, but he knows that those things don't long-term usually work. And so that's my personal opinion, not what he would say. But I just really appreciate him. I've gotten to know his family and they're just wonderful people. And, he has a lot of people that come into his office, a lot of patients who have type 2. And so the things that we share on this webinar or in the diabetes solution kit, which let me pull up here, are things that he uses in his office as well with his patients. And so it isn't just something that a bunch of marketing people threw together. This is actual information from a doctor, recipes. Something we're going to talk about today is, why does low carb work and what does that mean? We're going to talk about that today. Why does that work to help reverse your type 2? And all of that information is in the diabetes solution kit. You can find that at bartonwebinar.com. I will post a link to that. And Vince says the diabetes solution kit is my new Bible. Seriously, there is a lot of good information in here. A lot of good information, and we've spent a lot of time on it. So, but we always want your feedback. So let us know how it's going. We want to hear from you as well. Okay, I'm going to have Dr. Saunders do a disclaimer before I talk in circles about things that I should probably have a disclaimer for. So would you mind, Dr. Saunders, giving us a disclaimer?
Okay. The reason we give a disclaimer is so that everybody is very clear that the information that we're giving is for general audiences, for maybe a group of people or certain types of people. And so it's really important that you understand if that information applies to you or not. So either you look at it and say, does that apply to me? And I'll usually give, this is for these kind of people that have this type of diabetes, for example. Or you may need professional help, and you may need testing to be done to say, oh, yeah, I need that because I tested positive for it. So just so that you understand that this is general information and may not apply to you.
Awesome. That is good. The best part of this webinar is that it's free. So that's the one thing that I
hey, and you get what you pay for, right?
No. No, I don't even know how long we're going to be able to do this. I'm just waiting for the day when Joe's like, okay, we can't do this anymore, but he loves to be able to do this. Joe, if you've never met Joe, he's usually on these webinars with us, but he's traveling right now. And so isn't able to be here, but we love being able to do this. He loves to be able to do this. You get to ask a real doctor questions and it doesn't cost money, which is crazy to me. So anyway, again, we're going to talk about the diabetes solution kit, and we're going to talk about why low carb works. So in order to do that, we kind of need to get a basic understanding of what is happening in the body when we have type 2 and why low carb might be beneficial. So let's dig right into it, Dr. Saunders. Take it away.
Okay. So type 2 is very different from type 1. So the basics are, we use the same word diabetes to indicate somebody's blood sugar goes up. But there's a lot of different reasons why the blood sugar can go up. Well, it literally means peeing a lot, but in sugar diabetes, it generally, we're using the blood sugar is going up. So why is the blood sugar going up? Well, if you have type 1, it means you don't have enough insulin. So your pancreas isn't making insulin. Insulin is what allows the sugar to get into the cells. It opens up the cells so that sugar can get in. Sugar meaning glucose and even amino acids and potassium. So type 2 is completely different. It's just the opposite. In type 2, you become insulin resistant. So you still have an insulin problem, but instead of a lack of insulin, you have maybe too much insulin often, but you're resistant to it. Well, why would you get resistant to it? It's really simple. Cells are individuals. We like to think in terms of groups. But each cell, each of your 100 trillion cells in your body is an individual, and they act independently. So each one of these cells has within it all the machinery that's necessary to make proteins or to do whatever they do, make the hormone that they make or whatever they do. And they're completely enclosed and encapsulated. And they need energy to do what they do. So your body, as you're eating, your body supplies this energy in glucose and fat and protein. So as you're eating, you provide that, and then the cells see it in the blood and they go, oh, we need that. And then the insulin comes on, binds to it, and opens it up and lets that in the cell. So the cell, if you're eating every day, but you're not using it all up, then the cell's getting more and more and more, but it's not getting used up. So the cell gets jam-packed with all of this extra glucose, and it stores it. The cells store it as what's called glycogen, which is kind of like a starch with a bunch of glucose molecules bound together. And so in the side of the cell on one side, off to one side in the closet, they're filling up with glucose, right? It's filling up. When it gets full completely, the cell shuts off the insulin receptors from the inside, locks them. Okay, done. No more sugars coming in because our almacen is full completely. So then on the outside, the insulin comes and says, nope, we can't open this door because it's locked from the inside. So then your sugar goes up more because you can't get any sugar in there. So you eat more sugar and it goes up more. And then you eat more sugar and it goes up more. And then your pancreas is making a bunch of insulin going, we need to get rid of this. We got all this extra sugar. And so we need all the cells to bring it in. But the cells are going, no, we're full. What do you call that? Well, what happens is it's toxicity. So the blood sugar's going up because the cells are so full, they'll become toxic on glucose. So even though they absolutely have to have glucose, they get toxic on it. So then as the blood sugar's going up, the cells, 100 trillion cells, and they're not taking in any new glucose. They're done. Only your brain and your heart. So you can use a little bit of it, but not much of it. In order to drop the insulin resistance, you have to use up everything that's in the cells. So how are you going to do that? Well, exercise works really well, but also not taking in any glucose. So why does the low carbohydrate diet work? Well, if you're eating carbohydrates, but your cells aren't bringing in any carbohydrates, what's going to happen? Your blood sugar is going to go up. And so that's what you call diabetes, because what are you measuring? Your blood sugar. Or if you have a continuous glucose monitor, you're monitoring the glucose. That's your blood sugar. So as your blood sugar is high, you go, oh, I have diabetes. And then if you're not taking in any sugar, then the blood sugar starts going down, and then you don't have diabetes anymore because your blood sugar's not high. The other half of that, though, is to use up all of the energy that's in the cells and give that some time, so that the cells, then their cupboards get empty of all their food, and then they start saying, oh, we need to go shopping. We need some more food. So, so they turn on the insulin receptors, and then the insulin comes into the cell and says, oh, it opens up, and then it lets the food in, the energy, glucose. So if the cells are bringing the glucose in, then that brings the blood sugar down, and that's how you normalize everything. So being insulin sensitive is very important, because when you're insulin sensitive, that's how you know that your cells are using up their supply of sugar, and you're no longer toxic. So in the diabetes solution kit, we give a low carbohydrate diet. It's not the only way. Don't think that I would assume that this is the only way you could possibly do it. There are other ways, but this applies to the biggest number of people. Remember what I said in the beginning. But most people can get their blood sugar down, get their insulin sensitivity back, so that they can have a normal blood sugar and no longer have diabetes. So that's our purpose, and that's what the book is about. And that's essentially instruction on how you do it.
So good information. It sounds like we have quite a few people who are just getting started with the diabetes solution kit, or they don't have it yet. We have a kind of a mixed group here, so this is kind of fun. I'm going to go ahead and just ask some of these questions that have come in about the diabetes solution kit, since we're talking about it. Martha said, I am 2 weeks into the 20 carbs per day. My fasting blood sugar was 74 this AM.
Wow, that's normal.
Isn't that weird how sometimes when I read things, I change words? I don't know why I do that.
If you're in Canada, that's between 4 and 5. 74 is about 4.2 or something.
Okay, that's good. We have a lot of people from Canada on. So I have lost 6 pounds. Even my 2-hour postprandial blood sugars are below 100. I'm on metformin twice a day for the past 13 years. How long do I stay on the 20 carbs per day?
Oh, okay. Well, that depends. So as you're doing this and your blood sugars are normal, your next step is to go to your doctor and say, look, my blood sugars are normal. Which medication can I get off first? And so you may go to glucophage 1 per day or metformin 1 per day. And then you may go off it entirely. And so once you're no longer on medication and your blood sugars, morning blood sugars are generally between 70 and 90, or between 4 and 5 if you're in Canada, or your hemoglobin A1C drops below 5.4. At that point, you don't have a significant amount of insulin resistance, and then you start on phase 2. And phase 2 is where you're just adding in one thing at a time. You're not going like, oh boy, I got to eat pizza all I want. That's not going to work. So you just add one thing in at a time. And then you still have your monitor, your glucose monitor, or sticking your finger to make sure that thing that you're adding in is not contributing, like all of a sudden your blood sugar jumps up. Because you said your postprandial sugars are within normal, and that's wonderful. So you're probably pretty close to that. And I would start talking to your doctor about getting off the medication first.
All right. And great job. Awesome. It's fun to hear when people are doing well and making changes so quickly. It's so fun. And it's fun to see people who are making changes over time as well. Some, everybody's a little bit different. So you're doing the work, which is great. Okay, Juliet, this is a great question. Yes, I'm using the diabetes solution kit. When I fall off the wagon, how long does it take to return into ketosis?
It could be overnight, or it could be several days. I had one guy with diabetes didn't go into ketosis for 9 days, but he confessed to me that he wasn't really sticking to it that well. So it can take a while depending on how much you're eating and what you're eating. And even sometimes protein, like a high protein diet, people who are eating too much protein, the protein can be made into sugar, and you can end up with high blood sugars just from eating a high protein diet. So it's not a simple 1-to-1 or absolute number, but that's where the process that you're going through. That's what the book is about. It's really more of a process, what you're learning about your body and what works for you. And so, yes, we give you like strict guidelines to start off with because you got a detox, and that's just the detox. The really important part is after you finish the cleanse and you're all detoxed and your insulin is back to normal and everything is back to normal. Now what? And that's the rest of the book. That's the phase 2 and phase 3 rest of the book. And that's just as important. In fact, I think it's more important.
We've had some people asking again about the diabetes solution kit. Here it is. You can get this in this printed copy or in the digital format. You can go to bartonwebinar.com. I did post that in the chat, but that's where you can find information about the diabetes solution kit. John Miller says he's a new guy, but an old guy too. First time in this webinar. Welcome, John. Timothy is trying out fiber greens, and it has solved one major problem for him so far. That's awesome. Alfreda is here for the first time as well. And Carmen says, I really don't want to take metformin anymore. I don't feel like it did anything for me.
Okay, it often doesn't. Not everybody responds to it very well. If you burn fat already and you're not really insulin resistant, metformin may not make any difference in your life at all. So that is actually a normal thing.
Interesting. Okay. Candy says my blood sugar was low 120s until my doctor put me on Eliquis and Flexinade for AFib. Now it's 139. Please help.
Okay. Those are things that you should probably not stop right away. You really got to talk to your cardiologist about that kind of stuff. So your other option is to be on the phase 1 of the program. So phase 1 is a detox of carbs. You're essentially just detoxing off of carbs. So we give you a 20-gram carbohydrate diet, which means that you're not getting enough carbohydrates to run your body every day. And that forces your body to start to change to burn fat. And that can take days. People who fast, there was this really cool study with marathon runners. So Nike was trying to get a under 2-hour marathon. And if in 26.2 miles in under 2 hours means you're sprinting for 26.2 miles. This is like a fast sprint for 26.2 miles. These guys are super fast. And they do it for a long period of time. And so they tried to get them to carbo load enough carbohydrates in their body to fill up all their muscles with glycogen so that they could run the entire 26.2 miles. They couldn't do it. They couldn't get enough in their muscles. So they decided they had to burn fat. It took them 2 weeks of training to train these bodies that are used to burning carbohydrates to burn fat, to use fat for energy in their muscles. And so it's not something that is just like automatic. And so when you're on phase 1 of the program, it's not going to be like, well, the one that you just mentioned, Leslie, that was I'm 2 weeks into the program, I've lost 6 pounds and I'm back to normal. I was like, okay. That's unusual. So how long it takes is really the individual, because we've had people come, on this program after 3 months of being on the program and going, my fasting blood sugars are still in the 160s. What the heck? Yeah. And so we've dealt with that too. So not everybody's the same.
Yep. Okay, David says, I'm trying to follow your protocol for diet. I did have a problem, which was I got severe chest pains and had my gallbladder removed. I had a couple of reoccurrence of the pains after the surgery, and I understand I need to reduce the fat in my diet. How can I adapt your recommended diet to drastically reduce fats while reducing carbs?
Okay. Yes, this is where it gets complicated because when you lose your gallbladder, then you don't have like a lot of bile to be able to digest fats. So you can end up with other intestinal problems because you're not digesting fats well. So now those are issues. So what we have in the book are the free foods. There's a lot of them. So you can have all the broccoli you want. You can have all the cauliflower you want. You can have all the lettuce you want. You can have all the celery and cucumbers. And so you take that list of foods. All of those are high in fiber. And that's what you want. So someone in this kind of a situation where you don't have a gallbladder and you can't eat a high-fat diet, then how do you get a ketogenic diet, low carb, and a low-fat diet at the same time? There's just nothing left to eat. And that's the way to do it. So you're going to eat a lot of vegetables that are high in fiber and low in fat. And if you eat the vegetables, if you do have some fat in your diet and you eat a lot of vegetables with it, like let's say you have some meat and then a lot of broccoli and a little bit of meat, what that does is allows all of the fiber to hold on to the fat. It kind of solubilizes the fat and holds on to it so that you don't get all the intestinal problems with it.
Okay. Timothy says, I'm taking fiber greens. Doctor wants me to go on metformin, and I'm fighting it because I know type 2 can be controlled with diet, etc. Good job, Timothy. Let's see. Okay, MC says, been here before, but can't always catch it. Also was on the road since first ordering in August, so I'm not really on the program yet. I finally met with my endocrinologist. She was concerned about getting my A1C too low. I'm 75, obese, diagnosed type 2 in 2003. Started on metformin, now on Levemir and Ozempic. Not very active, in part because of arthritis. Not very disciplined.
Okay, well, that's a concern. Your endocrinologist being concerned about low blood sugar that's significant, especially if you're taking insulin. Levemir.
Okay. Let's see. As a pre-diabetic between 5.8% and 6%, as pre-diabetic between 5.8% and 6%.
That's the hemoglobin A1C.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Hemoglobin. All right. So 64 years old. I did low carb and maybe intermittent fasting during 5 months. And after I returned to 60 to 80 grams of carbs per day, I was afraid at this time because my blood sugar seems to rise much more than before. I returned back to low carb during the last 4 months and reached 5.7% with fasting. If I don't fast, my blood glucose stays close to 6. Is it because of protein? It looks very long for the sugar to lower in the blood, even with a few carbs.
Yeah, that can be an issue. Even with very few carbs, your blood sugar can get low because if you're eating a lot of proteins, that's what we were talking about before. Your liver can actually take protein, glutamine specifically, one of the amino acids, and make it into sugar, and you actually get glucose out of that. And the glucose can then go into your blood and raise if you're insulin resistant, it can raise your blood sugar. So keeping that low sometimes requires fasting. And intermittent fasting would be like you have a 5 or 6 hour window of eating. And the ideal is breakfast at 7 o'clock and lunch around 2 o'clock. That's the ideal or the perfect type of intermittent fasting. Because then that allows you to have an empty stomach at bedtime, which that's our 6-10 reset program, right? Is you get anabolic or rebuild your body during the night if your stomach is empty. So that issue of having to fast is just fine. That's the way your body works. You're very efficient. There are other ways, though, that you can decrease the proteins and add more fiber to your diet, like we were just talking about a minute ago. That's often very useful.
All right. A couple of questions here from both Carmen and Emmanuel. Whenever I have metformin, especially in the nights, I have stooling that runs for hours in the night. Carmen says metformin gave me diarrhea. Is this common?
Very common. Very common. It's usually like side effects of medications are 1% or whatever, and as many as 20% of people will get stomach issues from metformin. Most doctors will start you on a very low dose that's ineffective, like 500 milligrams once a day. That's generally ineffective. And then you work up to a higher dose so that you don't get that diarrhea. Because it is common.
Okay. Robert is asking, can you explain what happens with drinking alcohol and being type 2? Metformin does not agree with alcohol consumption and me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, alcohol, think of it like a sugar. Think of it like drinking juice or something that, you get an immediate sugar rush from the alcohol. Yeah, so it doesn't work very well. In fact, with type 2, most of my patients, I tell them to stop alcohol entirely. And then in phase 2, they can add in an occasional, beer or whatever. But they get to monitor how that affects their blood sugar.
Yes. Okay. We touched on this a little bit, but can this work? Can the diabetes solution kit work for a vegetarian or minimal meats and fish?
Yes. Gosh, but the way we have it set up, your diet, the recipes that we have and all of that are not really vegan in the book. But if you look at it like, okay, all of the free foods, those are good. 20 grams of carbohydrates, you still do the same 20-gram carbohydrates. So, if you eat an apple, that's the extent of your carbs for the day, because that's all you get. But then you can have as much of the other free foods as you want. So you can eat a ketogenic diet. If you had an avocado, for example, that doesn't have very much carbohydrates. I don't know how many carbs an avocado has, but I think it's less than 5. And so you can do a vegan diet with this low carb, and it still works, and it's great.
All right. Oh, you're frozen on my end.
Leslie, you're frozen.
Are we both frozen or just me? Can you hear me? Uh-oh. Let me know in the chat if you guys can hear me, or Dr. Saunders, or if we're moving, if you can see us moving. Dr. Saunders is frozen for me, so. Oh, okay. So I think I'm working. Okay. It's a really good look for Dr. Saunders frozen like that, though. Okay. Thanks, guys. I'm sure he'll jump right back on. Let's see if we have any other questions. Let's see. Anonymous says, I've been taking lean apple cider vinegar, turmeric, BP, Synachroma, and I want to start Narvala. So this is a good time actually for me to let you guys know. I'll post this in the chat also. If you go to, I'm going to type it, Barton Nutrition. I just posted that in the chat. There is a code. Let me see here. Webinar 25 that will save you 25% on supplements. And so you can use that. They've changed it. I feel like you weren't able to use that more than once in the past, but it should be fixed now and you can use it again. So be sure, if you go to bartonnutrition.com, use the code webinar 25, save 25%. And there, I posted the code right there as well. Okay, let me see if there's anything else that I can help with. Okay. Otherwise, keep in mind also Barton Webinar is kind of the site where you can find all the information about these webinars. There's a link to our past webinars. All 160 plus videos are on YouTube, so you can get a direct link to that. Our list of top 10 questions are there. So there's a lot of good information. Let's see. Timothy, yes, we are talking about net carbs when we talk about this. So your net carbs are total carbs minus fiber will get you your net carbs. So 20 grams of net carbs. Sorry, I'm trying to read these here. Okay, you can hear me and you can see me. Good. These are funny. Okay, good. Krish. Okay, I can't answer some of these questions without him. Let's see if there's any more that I can answer. Okay, Timothy says, I went off most carbs for over a week and felt absolutely terrible. Which I'm curious, how many of you have had a very similar response? there is some time, I think, when you switch, what you're eating, where your body needs to adjust. So you went off, your morning sugar is hovering around 135 and used to be in the 120 range. I'm having extreme fatigue lately in the middle of lots of tests and having a meeting with my doctor. Okay. Dr. Saunders is calling me here. 1 second. Hello. Oh, you're hopping on. It's you, but it's showing that you're back on. Okay. All right. Bye. Okay, guys. I think he's coming back. Let's see. He's just on mute and no video. So, okay. Do you need to have 20 carbs or is it okay to be less? You can do less. But yeah, 20 net carbs is what you want to stay at or below. I feel better with less carbs. We do hear that a lot, Juliet, and I am the same way. When intermittent fasting, why is 16 hours the magic number? What if someone does 15 hours only? Juliet, have you listened to Dr. Saunders' webinars on the 610 reset? If you haven't, I would recommend going to YouTube or actually go to bartonwebinar.com. There's a link to our YouTube channel. And when you get there, you can type in the search bar 610. He'll talk about that and why he really promotes being done eating by 6 and in bed by 10 and what happens to your body in those hours. So he's back, I think.
Yay.
Okay, yes, he is back. All right, good deal.
What did we miss?
I answered all the questions already. So
Dang.
No, I didn't. But quite a few were able to go through this. Lots of talk about carbs. Okay, we talked about the net carbs. Let's see. John says,
so you explained what net carbs are?
Yep, we went through that.
Okay. Good.
John says, I think these webinars are good to keep me going in the right direction. Changing eating habits is hard. Yes, John.
Indeed.
Yes. And that's why we love these webinars too. Because we want to hear your feedback in this too.
They did surveys. They did surveys and found that people were more likely to change their religion than their diet.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not shocking, I guess.
Pretty hard.
Wow. Okay. Let's see what else. Okay. Anne says, goofy question. Is there an impact to insulin of chewing sugar-free gum? Great question.
Good question. Okay. I have actually personal experience. So before I've talked about this on the webinars before, and I told people, I think that it's not a good idea to do sugar-free gum because the sweet taste tells your pancreas that sugar's coming down and you better release some insulin. So it tells the pancreas to make more insulin. And it turns out now I have 2 cases where that has been the cause. And this one guy was like, my diet is so good. Like I don't eat junk food. I don't eat high carb stuff. I don't eat fatty stuff. I have a really good high quality diet. Well, he's chewing gum all day long. And so we figured out that's what the issue was. So he went off the gum, and guess what? His hemoglobin A1C came down, his insulin resistance went away, his insulin level dropped, and it got better. And the only change that he made was the gum. And I had one other woman with a similar kind of issue. So at least for some people, sugar-free anything is probably not good for you. The sweet taste is enough to cause more insulin resistance. So, and we've had people who have been on the program, on the Diabetes Solution Kit for months, and they're like, it's not working for me. And we find out that they're drinking like stevia in their tea and things like that. And that's a problem.
So this is another really good question that Anne says. So how about toothpaste?
That's a good question. I don't know. You only brush your teeth a few times a day, a couple times a day or something. So I don't know that that's a big issue. It's not like chewing gum, one after another all day long, or sipping on teas with stevia in them or whatever. So I don't know that that's an issue, but
I will
maybe.
say I have made my own toothpaste. So there are options for that if you feel like you want to give it a try.
My grandmother would dip her toothbrush in hydrogen peroxide, and then she had a little plate with sodium bicarbonate, and she'd stick the sodium bicarbonate on it, and then she'd brush her teeth with that.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's interesting. That's
it
probably all
makes
you
a
need.
lot of sense. So the hydrogen peroxide kills bacteria and whitens your teeth, and the bicarbonate makes your mouth more alkaline, so you don't wear your teeth away.
Wow. So baking soda.
Baking soda.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So interesting. Sometimes it's just the simple things that we need to get back to. All right. Let's see. Allison, hello. To the one guy who has a lot of arthritis pain, my hands are very deformed, but I got rid of all pain by cutting out animal protein. Fish doesn't bother me, but if you give up beef, chicken, and turkey, not sure about pork, your arthritis may go away, but give it several months. Now, after many years of no hand pain, if I eat beef within 4 hours, my hand joints are aching. Very interesting. I find that so interesting. I also had like a plantar fasciitis kind of thing happening years ago. And I did like Whole30, cleaned up my diet, no dairy, no grains, etc. It went away. It was amazing. So food really does affect our bodies in such big ways.
Yeah.
Okay, someone just wants net carbs explained again. And, I just said net carbs are carbs minus fiber.
Yeah, total carb that they'll give you in the health, in the nutrition facts little square thing. It'll say total carbs and then fiber. You just subtract the fiber from the total, and that gives you the net.
Yep. Yes, you guys are right. You guys see, this is fun. So a couple people have asked about the diet soda, and now they already have answered. They've heard the answers to their questions about the way that sugar-free sugars work. And so that's also one of the top 10 questions on our Barton webinar page, where we talk about that. So good job, you guys. You answered.
Yeah, it's really interesting is the studies done comparing sugar sodas to diet sodas. People on diet sodas gain more weight than people on sugar sodas. And they think that's because the diet sodas have the sweeteners in them are like 300 times sweeter than sugar. So because of that excess sweetness, it probably stimulates more insulin resistance. And it's insulin that makes you put on weight, because insulin gets the sugar into the fat cells and causes you to make fat and grow your fat cells.
Okay. Lupita says, on phase 1, stop taking all supplements. Now anemic again. Is it okay to take iron?
Oh, yeah. Okay. So take a little bit of iron that you can get, like Floridix. They're liquid soluble forms of iron, because iron pills, the iron sulfate pills, they're actually quite toxic, and they can eat holes in your stomach. It's iron. It's like really heavy, so it just sinks to the bottom of the stomach and eats a hole in it, because iron is irritating to tissues. So one thing you can do is take the liquid form like Floridix, and then take vitamin C. And if you just add vitamin C, like 500 milligrams with each meal, you're not going to throw anything out of whack by adding 500 milligrams each meal, but you will absorb iron a lot better by doing that. Otherwise, remember, it's kind of important to find out why your iron is low, because there isn't a deficiency of iron in foods, then if your iron is low, are you bleeding? Because sometimes intestinal bleeding can show up just as iron deficiency because you can't see the blood in the stool.
What are rose hips?
Rose hips are they're the berries that after the rose dies, and then what's left is there's like a berry on the end. Those are rose hips, and they contain a lot of vitamin C and bioflavonoids.
I want to say that iron by Floridix, there is a version that has rose hips, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I haven't taken that for a long time, but I just thought about it. Okay, these are great questions, you guys. Vince says, how can you know if your medication is working or not?
Well, when you're on it, your blood sugar is normal. When you're off it, your blood sugar goes up. That's the simple way to do it. Is to try with it and without it. And that's the most reasonable thing.
Okay. Lloyd said, I went from 10.4 to 6.5 A1C, but lost more weight than I wanted to. How do I gain weight back without increasing my A1C?
Okay. If you're losing weight and you have like prediabetes or diabetes and your blood sugar is not well controlled and you're losing weight, generally what that means is either you don't make enough insulin, or you have antibodies against insulin, or you have an insensitivity to insulin. So there's something else going on, because it's insulin that allows you to put on weight, both fat and protein. So your muscle weight requires insulin just as much as your fat weight requires insulin, because the insulin gets the proteins, the amino acids, into your muscle cells. So if you're losing weight and you don't want to lose weight, and you have high blood sugar, then there's an issue with insulin, and you should test your insulin levels to make sure you have enough, because you may be going into type 1, or what we call type 1.5, where you have a little bit of insulin but not enough for your body.
All right. Timothy says, my doctor is happy I'm on this webinar today. She's open to these kinds of things.
Yay.
That's great. Joby says, is it healthy to use beet powder on a daily basis for type 2 and also consuming carrots every day?
Yeah, beet powder is great. Beet powder can help grow really good bacteria and lower inflammation. And what was the other one?
Carrots. Is it okay to consume carrots every day?
Yeah, but keep in mind, if you're on phase 1, that carrots do contain carbs, a significant amount of carbohydrates. So if you're on phase 1, just count them in as your carbohydrates. They're not one of the free foods.
Natalia says, if keeping blood sugar at a normal range, will I be able to reduce diabetic retinopathy?
Oh, okay. Maybe. The problem is retinopathy is not that simple, that it's just because the blood sugar is high. There's damage being done usually from not getting enough sugar into the retina. Is the problem, is the transport proteins that bring sugar from the blood into the extracellular fluid through that blood-brain barrier, which includes part of the retina, includes the retina. So, just keeping it normal may not be enough. It's sometimes you have to get it low enough, like in the 70s, on the low side, to be able to make more of those glucose transport proteins so that you can get sugar across that membrane and have it function normally again. Plus, there might be other issues going on. If you have retinopathy, then consider also you could be deficient in vitamin B12, vitamin B3, astaxanthin, zeaxanthin. These are antioxidants. Vitamin A is really important with all the carotenoids, beta carotene, and vitamin E and zinc. So I think that retinopathy requires a bigger picture look at it, saying, okay, what's going on here, and why are the eyeballs not functioning?
Mary says, I'm experiencing hair loss since cutting back on carbs. Will this improve with time?
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so hair loss. Hair loss comes. There's 4 hormones that can cause hair loss, and one of them is a stress hormone called cortisol. Cortisol makes you insulin resistant. Cutting back on carbs, if it's a stressful situation, you can actually increase your cortisol, and one of the things that could happen is you would lose hair. Your hair will generally grow back either way, no matter which one, progesterone, for example. If you lose progesterone, then you'll get hair loss. Like after having a baby, a lot of women, their hair just like falls out and they're going, oh my gosh, I'm going bald. But they never go bald because it grows back really fast. And so that's the hormone things. And then not having enough oxygen or good circulation. So I'm trying to think of why the low carbohydrate diet would decrease the energies in the hair cells that would cause the hair to fall out. There is a vitamin called biotin. It's vitamin B7, which if you're low in that and you decrease the carbohydrates and you're burning fat, then you need B2 and B7, vitamin B2, vitamin B7, and that should fix the hair problem.
Okay. John is asking, what's a minimum safe glucose number?
Minimum safe. Okay. 40 is still safe. 30s is not safe. 40, you're going to feel it. You're going to feel hypoglycemic. You're going to have headache, fatigue. You're not going to feel good. 50, a lot of people don't notice a problem at 50. 60s, hardly anybody has an issue with it. 70s kind of like in the normal blood sugar. So you can't think of it like there's a number, but when people are in the 30s, they're definitely feeling it and they can pass out, and in the 20s, that's when they go into a coma. So it kind of gives you the range of where people feel it.
Okay. Let's see. Dr. Jonathan says my last A1C was 7.1 on August 12th, which was a 37% reduction from 11.3 on April 30th when I had a malignant melanoma removed. At the same time, I was diagnosed with high blood sugar. I went on a low carb diet, was put on 2,000 milligrams of metformin along with 15 units of insulin. I have been taking Synachroma twice a day since the operation. At present, I've cut my metformin dose to 500 milligrams per day and 11 units of insulin per day. My endocrinologist said that I am on the verge of control of my diabetes, and I agreed that I can cut my metformin dose to present levels. I'm confident that my next A1C test in mid-November will be below 7, and I plan to cut my metformin and or insulin dose again, with the goal of eventually being to cut them both out entirely. What do you recommend? By the way, that max dose of metformin was giving me explosive diarrhea.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah. To put you on 2,000 milligrams, that's a lot to start off with in the explosive area. Okay. So as a rule, that amount of metformin, 500 milligrams of metformin, is not generally effective. When studies are done on it, they look at it, and hemoglobin A1C does not drop significantly with 500 milligrams of metformin. So whether you're taking that or not probably isn't a significant factor in your general blood sugar control. The 11 units of insulin is also a pretty low dose, and it tells me that you may not need insulin at all The more insulin you have, the more insulin resistant you get. So you think about what we first started off with, saying we have this cell, and this cell is full of sugar, and that has so the insulin receptors are blocked. But there's a few insulin receptors around, because there's actually thousands on a cell. It's not like there's only one or two, and most of them are blocked. But the inside of the cell didn't get all of them blocked. So you add more insulin in there, and then it opens up a door on the back door and allows more sugar to get in. Well, now you're getting toxic. So more insulin causes more insulin resistance. So it's not a good idea to be on insulin if you have type 2, because generally you have too much. So first thing I would do is do a test called a C peptide. And that's just C dash peptide. And that C peptide is gives you a sense of how much insulin your pancreas is putting out. And so if you have a high level, then you probably should not be taking insulin. So that's the first thing to talk to your endocrinologist about, is getting tested.
Okay, good stuff. Let's see. Don says, in your heart health publication under essential vitamins for the heart, you list D-ribose, and yet D-ribose is a sugar. That seems to contradict what you're saying in the fixed blood sugar publication and webinar.
Yeah, well, yeah, it contradicts because biology is contradictory in every sense. If you get too much of something, you're toxic. If you don't have enough of something. Well, ribose is a sugar that's the backbone of deoxyribonucleic acid and ribonucleic acid. And in order for cells to reproduce, in order for mitochondria to reproduce, you have to have this ribose. We generally make it, but a lot of people don't make enough of it, or they don't eat enough of it. So the supplement for the heart health is to increase the numbers of mitochondria that make energy for the cells. This is not a sugar that your body uses for energy. So it's not like glucose, where you're increasing your glucose level. But yes, it is a little bit sweet, and it may cause you to release more insulin. But it's not going to raise your glucose levels or create a problem.
Okay. Chris says, we got some big words here. Is tocotrienol more potent than vitamin E, D, alpha tocopherol? Do these both elicit the same metabolic functions?
That is a great question. And actually, it seems like when the research is done that they're partially interchangeable. The tocopherols versus the tocotrienols, they're partially interchangeable, but not completely. They don't do, the tocotrienols don't do everything that the tocopherols do. And if you have the group of them, so there are several, there's alpha, beta, gamma of the tocotrienols and the alpha, beta, gamma of the tocopherols. And if you have the whole group, you get a much better vitamin E benefit than just isolating one of them. So most of the vitamin E pills that you get, the supplements, are DL alpha tocopherol, and that is probably not nearly as useful, not nearly as useful as getting, like, if you're eating almonds, then you're getting all of them, the tocopherols and the tocotrienols, and they work together synergistically to really improve the function of your body.
Okay. All right. We have a few more questions here. I think these I can direct to some of our webinars, actually. So I know you need to meet with your patients. So thank you, Dr. Saunders. We so appreciate you, and we will be looking forward to next week's webinar with you.
Okay, see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, a few more questions here that I can see. Alan had asked, what's the relationship between any of the types of diabetes and foot neuropathy? Great question. We actually have done a few webinars on that within the past few weeks. And so if you go to bartonwebinar.com, there's a link to our YouTube channel, and you can search that or see it. It's probably episode 150 something. And so I would just recommend you going there. Also, Alfreda, you asked about stress. And the answer to your question, does stress increase glucose numbers? Yes. And we did a lot of webinars on that as well, but that's also a recent webinar that we just did, probably in the 150s. It comes up a lot. In fact, it's one of the number one things that it increases those glucose numbers. So let's see, how would 610 reset work for night shift workers? Okay, Dr. Saunders has addressed that as well in one of those webinars. And same with metformin. So just again, bartonwebinar.com, go to the YouTube channel, type in metformin, type in 610, type in stress. You'll find webinars where we talk about those things. So, okay, you guys, thanks so much for joining us. We will be back here next week. We so appreciate you. If you are open to sharing your story, please email me, Leslie@bartonpublishing.com. That's LESLIE@bartonpublishing.com. I would love to hear your story and chat a little bit more. So thank you guys for hopping on, and I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.